In the modern world, men have been deceived by a dangerous illusion. The belief that to attract women, one must chase them, flatter them, and prove his worth through endless gestures of validation. This is the great tragedy of masculine weakness in the age of emotional dependency. Men have become the hunters who forget that the strongest predator is the one who lets his prey come to him. They chase, they text first, they confess too early, and in doing so, they forfeit their power long before the first battle of attraction even begins. The problem is not that women are difficult to attract. The problem is that men are taught to approach attraction as an act of desperation, not domination. The truth, as Machiavelli would whisper from the shadows of Florence, is simple: power never chases, it attracts. The lion does not beg the gazelle to run toward it. The throne does not move toward the servant. The moon does not plead for attention, it simply shines. All eyes look up in awe. So too must a man of strategy become, a presence that pulls, not a fool who pursues. But the modern man has forgotten this. He has become a creature of emotional dependence, reacting to beauty rather than commanding it. His energy is scattered, his thoughts consumed by how to please, how to text, how to prove himself. Yet Machiavelli would remind him, the one who seeks approval already admits inferiority. This video is not a lesson in romance, it is a lesson in power. It is not about how to win a woman's heart. It is about how to rule the battlefield of attraction. Because attraction, like politics, is not built on kindness or charm alone, it is built on psychological leverage. The problem that plagues men today is not a lack of desire, but a lack of strategy. They believe emotions will win loyalty, but Machiavelli taught that emotions are weapons, not gifts. The man who wishes to be desired must understand the nature of desire itself. It grows not in abundance, but in scarcity, not in comfort, but in uncertainty. Men today give women too much certainty. They reveal their thoughts, expose their needs, and make themselves predictable. Predictability kills mystery, and mystery is the heartbeat of attraction. A woman cannot chase what she already possesses. Therefore, when a man places his heart too early on the table, he gives her the map, the treasure, and the key, leaving nothing for her imagination to pursue. The Machiavellian man, however, understands that every interaction is a chess game, not a confession. He speaks less, observes more, and ensures that his silence carries more power than another man's desperate words. The problem we are going to solve in this video is psychological enslavement, the kind that men willingly submit to when they crave validation from women. We will expose how this weakness corrupts attraction at its core and how to reverse the dynamic so that the woman begins to invest, chase, and desire. Machiavelli would never have pursued the approval of those he wished to rule. He would have built an aura so potent that others sought his favor. This same principle applies to the realm of love. The man who builds psychological sovereignty becomes magnetic. He does not chase women because he knows that true seduction begins with self-control, not persuasion. Imagine for a moment the modern dating landscape: men scrolling, swiping, and chasing, each competing to prove he is worthy of her attention. Meanwhile, the woman sits upon an invisible throne of options, filtering, testing, rejecting. This imbalance of power exists not because women are superior, but because men have surrendered their most valuable asset, their mystery. They have given women the certainty that they will always be available. And certainty, to a woman's mind, breeds comfort but kills attraction. What once intrigued her becomes ordinary. What once challenged her becomes routine. The chase dies because the hunter has already been caught. To correct this imbalance, we must think like Machiavelli. We must return to the art of strategic withholding, to the discipline of emotional restraint, and to the understanding that every word, every action, and every silence must serve a purpose. This is not manipulation, this is mastery. For Machiavelli, control was not about cruelty, it was about commanding perception. Likewise, in attraction, perception is everything. If you appear too eager, you lose value. If you remain centered, grounded, and purpose-driven, you become the enigma she cannot decipher. This is the foundation upon which our 5 Machiavellian rules for attraction will stand. We will dismantle the old, weak, emotional approach and replace it with a mindset built on dominance, control, and power. You will learn how to reverse the dynamic, how to make women chase you, not through deception, but through psychological authority, because in the world of attraction, as in politics, the one who understands human nature always wins. The tone and style of this Machiavellian script must breathe the same air as the Renaissance, elegant, commanding, and laced with the quiet venom of wisdom. Every word should echo the voice of Niccolo Machiavelli, the master of human nature, whose understanding of power transcended the boundaries of time and morality. His language was not one of sentiment but of strategy, not of passion but of perception. The tone must not beg for attention. It must command it. It should feel as if Machiavelli himself has been resurrected in the modern world, gazing upon men's foolishness in matters of love and whispering truths too dark and too real for the faint-hearted. The style must carry the weight of philosophical gravity, yet remain intimate enough to pierce the viewer's mind. Each sentence must feel deliberate, as though it was carved, not spoken. The narrator does not entertain, he educates with precision, dissecting human emotion the way a strategist studies the battlefield before the war begins. The rhythm of the script should mimic the movement of power itself, calm, then sharp, smooth, then cutting, serene, then merciless. Every phrase should sound like it belongs in a book that was never meant to be read by the ordinary, a manuscript written for those few who dare to understand control. The voice of the narrator must not be emotional or sentimental. It must be measured, deliberate and analytical, yet rich with poetic undertones. It is the voice of a man who has seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, and knows that love and power are built on the same laws of human weakness. The style should resemble that of a master teaching an apprentice, not as a friend sharing advice, as a philosopher revealing truths that have been hidden from the knave. The audience must feel as if they are receiving forbidden knowledge, something dangerous yet liberating. Every sentence must drip with authority, confidence, and a certain indifference to morality, because in the Machiavellian world, morality bends before the throne of strategy. In tone, it should not be loud, passionate, theatrical, but quietly ominous and persuasive, the kind of wisdom that seduces through stillness. When the narrator speaks of desire, he must sound like a man who has mastered it. When he speaks of control, it must sound like law. The audience must feel that they are not merely listening. They are being initiated. The script should carry the tension of a dark sermon, one that challenges the viewer's beliefs about love, attraction, and masculinity. It must expose the flaws in their behavior not with anger, with cold truth. That is the true Machiavellian tone, detached, intelligent, and ruthlessly observant. The language itself should alternate between metaphorical and practical, weaving together the poetry of philosophy and the clarity of psychology. When Machiavelli described power, he did not speak in riddles, he spoke in strategies disguised as proverbs. The same applies here. The narrator must use imagery. The lion and the fox, the throne and the court, the battlefield and the heart, to transform ordinary dating advice into an art form. Every metaphor should serve a purpose, to awaken the viewer to the hidden mechanics of attraction that operate beneath emotions, beneath words, beneath the visible. This tone must make the audience uncomfortable in the most necessary way. It should expose the illusions that govern their thinking, the romantic myths that keep them weak and predictable. Yet it should not mock them, it should elevate them. The narrator must appear above emotion, not because he lacks it, but because he has mastered it. His calmness must create a sense of superiority, as if he stands on a higher plane of awareness while others drown in their impulses. That is the secret of Machiavellian tone. It doesn't shout its dominance. It whispers it, and the world leans closer to listen. The pacing of this style must be deliberate, slow, methodical, hypnotic. Each word should feel as if it carries a secret weight. Pauses between phrases must feel like moments of contemplation, where the narrator allows the listener's mind to process the sharpness of the message. The music accompanying this voice should be minimal yet suspenseful. Soft strings, echoes of old halls, the faint sounds of time passing, so that the voice becomes the true instrument of power. In style, the script should reflect Machiavelli's duality, his ability to sound both noble and ruthless in the same breath. When describing desire, it should sound beautiful. When describing weakness, it should sound cruel. When revealing strategy, it should sound absolute. This duality is what gives the script its hypnotic pull. the blend of elegance and brutality, beauty and dominance, reason and seduction. The narrator is not simply explaining attraction, he is unveiling the psychology of conquest. The diction should lean toward classical eloquence. Words like power, virtue, restraint, illusion, command, desire, sovereignty, evoking a timeless essence that separates this content from modern casual speech. There must be no slang, no trivial humor, and no emotional pandering. The style should instead evoke the aura of an ancient manuscript being read aloud by a scholar who has lived through wars of both the heart and the mind. The audience must not feel entertained. They must feel enlightened and unsettled, as if they are seeing their own behavior from the eyes of a strategist who understands every hidden motive, every unspoken rule, and every illusion they once believed in. The goal of this Machiavellian script is not to teach the art of romance, but to awaken the viewer to the architecture of psychological control that governs attraction itself. It seeks to transform the mind of the modern man from that of an emotional participant to that of a strategic observer, to make him see love not as an accident of passion, as a game of influence, a battlefield of perception where only the disciplined mind survives. The script must not aim to entertain, it must aim to restructure the viewer's understanding of desire, confidence, and power. It should teach him that attraction is never truly about beauty or charm, but about how power is perceived and distributed between two minds. The purpose here is to train the audience to think like a Machiavellian strategist, to navigate relationships not with naivety, with the awareness that every gesture, every silence, and every glance is part of a greater negotiation of power. A Machiavellian man does not see attraction as an emotional lottery where luck decides who is loved. He sees it as a calculated game of psychological positioning, where value is created, maintained, and projected with precision. The script must instill this mindset, replacing emotional reactivity with strategic calmness, impulsive desire with intellectual control. Most men enter the arena of attraction as servants, not kings. They bring offerings of affection, hoping to be accepted, rather than bringing presence, which demands respect. The goal of this script is to end that pattern of self-sabotage, to reveal how men unconsciously give away their power by seeking validation. Machiavelli would see such behavior as weakness, a form of political suicide in the court of desire. The man who chases acceptance has already surrendered his authority. The one who controls perception, however, controls attraction itself. Therefore, the true objective of this lesson is to shift power inward, to create a man who no longer measures his worth by the reactions of women, but by the strength of his own self-command. This script aims to show that attraction is not something you get from others. It is something you create through the projection of value. A man's energy, his composure, and his confidence speak louder than words, louder than gifts, louder even than appearance. The Machiavellian man understands that women are not drawn to effort. They are drawn to emotional dominance, the aura of a man who cannot be easily influenced. He becomes desirable not because he chases, but because he remains unshaken when others chase him. This is not arrogance, it is emotional sovereignty, the foundation of all masculine allure. The goal of the script is to implant this sovereignty in the viewer's mind, to make him understand that control of self is the highest form of seduction. At its core, the script's mission is to awaken the viewer to the invisible laws that govern attraction. Every human being is guided by psychological forces: curiosity, uncertainty, scarcity, challenge, and emotional reward. The average man ignores these laws, behaving impulsively, revealing too much, and chasing too soon. The Machiavellian man studies these forces and uses them as instruments. He does not react to emotion, he orchestrates it. He creates tension deliberately, using silence where others would speak, indifference where others would plead, and scarcity where others would flood attention. The goal of the script, therefore, is to teach control through awareness, to turn emotion into a tool rather than a master. This is not a guide for manipulation, it is a guide for mastery. Machiavelli himself would say that control over others begins with control over oneself. Thus, the script will not instruct men to deceive women, but to discipline themselves. It will reveal that true attraction is born from internal strength, from the aura of a man who does not seek, attracts naturally because he stands for something unshakable. It is this transformation, from the needy to the needed, from the follower to the leader, that defines the ultimate goal of this teaching. The script must make the viewer question his own behavior. Why do I chase? Why do I give power away so freely? Why do I fear silence? Each question should guide him towards self-awareness, and through that awareness, toward dominance in his own emotional world. The ultimate aim of this script is to elevate attraction into an intellectual pursuit, something that demands calculation, patience, and self-respect. It should help men understand that love and politics are not separate worlds, but mirrors of the same truth. That power flows to those who appear least dependent on it. The script should teach the viewer to cultivate that aura of quiet control, the unspoken confidence that makes a woman wonder what lies beneath his calmness. In this way, the script becomes a psychological weapon, not to harm, but to empower. It transforms the listener from a participant in the game of desire into its silent architect. It teaches him to see attraction not as pursuit, but as strategy, not as luck, but as leverage, not as emotion, as the art of influence disguised as affection. The structure of this Machiavellian script must follow the design of a grand philosophical discourse, a gradual unfolding of truth that begins with curiosity, builds tension through revelation, and ends with the calm authority of understanding. It should not be rushed, for power never hurries. It unfolds deliberately, layer by layer, like a master strategist revealing only what is necessary at each moment. The viewer must feel guided through a transformation, from ignorance to awareness, from reaction to control, from emotional dependence to psychological mastery. Every section must serve a clear purpose to reshape perception. The script opens with the intro and hook, a moment that strikes the listener immediately, confronting him with the painful reality of his own weakness. It begins by exposing the emotional imbalance in modern relationships, the endless cycle of men chasing, pleasing, and performing, while women remain in control of the emotional economy. This opening must be poetic but piercing, a mirror held to the modern man's face, reflecting his submissive approach to attraction. It should present the central problem as one of psychological slavery. Men are not losing women because they are unattractive, because they have surrendered their power. The hook must promise redemption, a reversal of dynamics, a way to reclaim what was lost. It should awaken a deep internal question. What if everything I was taught about attraction is a lie? That question is the spark that will keep the listener engaged throughout the journey. After the hook, the script transitions into rule I control the frame. This section must establish emotional dominance as the foundation of attraction. It explains that a man's frame, his inner stability, his perspective, dictates how every interaction unfolds. When a man loses control of his emotions, he also loses control of perception and therefore power. The narration here must sound absolute, authoritative, and reflective, guiding the viewer to understand that women subconsciously test men not for fun, for leadership. The Machiavellian man passes these tests not by reacting, but by remaining unmoved. His calmness is his weapon, his restraint is his throne. The first rule thus teaches the law of psychological stillness, the art of being the mountain, not the wind that bends around it. The script then flows into rule A, reveal less, command more. This part explores the principle of strategic opacity. Machiavelli often advised rulers to conceal their intentions, for transparency weakens authority. In attraction, the same law applies. The narrator explains that mystery breeds fascination, and fascination creates pursuit. When a man reveals too much too soon, he becomes ordinary. The rule guides the viewer to practice emotional discretion, to speak less about his plans, desires, and weaknesses, and to let his silence become an instrument of intrigue. The tone here should feel secretive and seductive, reminding the audience that the most dangerous men are those whose minds cannot be easily read. Next comes rule Heller, create mystery through distance. This section must teach the ancient art of absence, the discipline of withdrawal. Machiavelli would argue that scarcity increases value, and so too does distance increase desire. The narrator explains that constant availability breeds familiarity, and familiarity destroys fascination. The modern man floods women with attention, while the Machiavellian man understands the power of space. Physical, emotional, and psychological. Through controlled distance, He makes his presence felt more deeply than those who never leave. The tone here must feel almost philosophical, reminding the listener that absence is not weakness but strategic presence, the kind that lingers long after the man is gone. Following that, the script enters rule IV and rewards scarcity, not availability. This is the principle of selective investment, the art of giving in fragments, not floods. The narrator explains that attention and affection must be treated as currency, and only those who earn it should receive it. Machiavelli taught rulers to reward loyalty sparingly to maintain control. Likewise, a man must reward genuine effort, not expectation. This section should sound analytical yet elegant, showing how emotional scarcity increases perceived value. The man who gives too freely teaches others to take him for granted. The one who gives rarely becomes unforgettable. Finally, the script culminates in Rule VZ, become the prize. This is the heart of the Machiavellian philosophy, to transform oneself into the center of gravity in every interaction. The narrator explains that attraction reaches its peak when a man stops seeking approval and instead embodies purpose. He becomes the prize not through arrogance, but through self-sufficiency. Women chase such a man not because he tries to impress them, but because his existence already commands attention. The tone here must feel victorious, regal, and self-assured, as though the man has finally ascended to the throne of his own life. It should feel like the closing of a powerful doctrine, not a conclusion but a realization. After unveiling all 5 rules, the script moves into a closing reflection, a philosophical synthesis of everything learned. The narrator does not congratulate the viewer. He challenges him. He reminds him that understanding power means nothing without discipline, and attraction cannot be mastered until emotion is tamed. The closing tone should feel cold yet inspiring, as if Machiavelli himself were offering a final piece of wisdom before vanishing back into history. The structure must ensure that by the end, the viewer feels not entertained, but enlightened, as though he has just witnessed the transformation of thought, from weakness to strategy, from chasing to commanding, from man to Machiavellian. And now, as the echoes of Machiavelli's wisdom fade into the silence, the lesson stands complete. What you have heard is not merely a doctrine of attraction. It is a doctrine of power, carved from the same stone that built empires and broke kings. The game between men and women has never been about love alone. It has always been about psychology, perception, and control. The weak will always chase, the strong will always attract. For in the realm of desire, power is not taken. It is gravitational, drawn toward the one who needs nothing. To think like Machiavelli is to understand that every interaction between a man and a woman is an exchange of energy, and the one who controls that exchange commands the outcome. The fool acts out of emotion, hoping to be seen. The strategist acts out of awareness, knowing that mystery is more powerful than confession and restraint more seductive than flattery. He moves not to impress, but to influence, not to please, but to provoke fascination. These 5 rules are not tricks, they are principles of nature. The world obeys the silent, the composed, the patient. Just as kingdoms are ruled not by those who shout, but by those who observe, so too is attraction ruled by the man who masters his emotions and bends perception to his will. Control the frame and you control the narrative. Reveal less and you command more. Withdraw and the world will follow your absence. Reward scarcity and your presence will gain worth. Become the prize and everything will orbit around your value. A woman may be drawn to beauty, but she will chase power, and true power does not come from dominance over others. It comes from mastery over self. That is the essence of Machiavellian attraction, to turn desire into an instrument, to make silence speak louder than words, and to live in such a way that your indifference becomes irresistible. So remember this, do not chase her. Become the man she cannot forget. Do not beg for attention. Become the presence she cannot escape. Power is quiet, control is subtle, and attraction is simply the shadow of dominance, well disguised. In a world where men chase endlessly, the one who stands still becomes the one they all move toward.